He was the most beautiful angel ever created. He stood closer to God than any other being in existence. His name meant light-bringer, and he shone with a radiance that outstripped the stars. He was perfect in every way, in wisdom, in beauty, in power. He had everything, and it was not enough. He looked at the throne of the Almighty and decided that he deserved to sit there. He raised an army among the angels. He declared war on heaven itself. And in doing so, he became the most infamous figure in the history of Western civilization. This is the story of Lucifer's fall. The angel who had everything, lost everything, and became the embodiment of evil itself. To understand the fall, you first have to understand what Lucifer was before it happened. And the biblical texts paint a picture of a being so magnificent that it is almost impossible to overstate. The prophet Ezekiel describes a figure many scholars and traditions have identified with Lucifer, a guardian cherub adorned with every precious stone: ruby, topaz, emerald, sapphire, diamond. His coverings were crafted with gold. He was described as the signet of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. He walked among the stones of fire on the holy mountain of God. The name Lucifer comes from the Latin translation of a passage in Isaiah, where the figure is called the morning star, the son of the dawn. He was a light-bearer, a being whose very purpose was to reflect and amplify the glory of God. Among all the angels, the cherubim, the seraphim, the archangels, Lucifer held a position of extraordinary honor. Some traditions place him as the highest-ranking angel in all of creation, the one who stood closest to the throne. He was not just powerful, he was dazzling. He was the living embodiment of divine beauty, crafted with an intention and a care that the texts suggest was unique among all created beings. God made many angels, but he made one Lucifer. Ezekiel records a devastating observation. It says that Lucifer's heart became proud on account of his beauty, that his wisdom was corrupted by his own splendor. In other words, the very gifts that made him extraordinary became the instruments of his destruction. He looked at himself and saw perfection. He looked at his radiance and believed it was his own, rather than a reflection of the God who created him. And once that thought took root, it grew. The prophet Isaiah records the 5 declarations that tradition attributes to Lucifer in the moment of his rebellion. 5 statements, each one more audacious than the last. I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the mount of assembly. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. 5 times he said, I will. Not I wish, not I wonder, I will. This was not doubt or questioning. This was a calculated, deliberate decision. The most magnificent being in creation looked at the Creator and said, I will take your place. Some traditions teach that the final catalyst was the creation of humanity. When God announced that he would make human beings, fragile, mortal creatures of dust, and that the angels would serve them, Lucifer could not bear it. He, the most glorious being in heaven, was expected to bow before something made of clay. His pride would not allow it. Whatever the final trigger, the decision was made. Lucifer chose rebellion. Lucifer did not rebel alone. He convinced other angels to join his cause. The book of Revelation describes the conflict directly. There was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. The scale of this event is staggering. Some traditions estimate that 1/3 of all the angels in existence followed Lucifer. 1/3 of the celestial host, beings of immense power and intelligence, chose to side with a created being against their creator. Whatever argument Lucifer made, whatever promise he offered, it was persuasive enough to divide heaven itself. But the war was not close. The text says, "The dragon was not strong enough, and he and his angels lost their place in heaven." Michael and the loyal angels prevailed, and the rebellion was crushed. There is no account of God personally intervening because he did not need to. The loyal angels, led by Michael, were enough. This detail matters. Lucifer believed he could challenge the Almighty, but he could not even defeat the Almighty's general. His pride had blinded him so completely that he miscalculated on the most fundamental level imaginable. He thought he was more than he was. And that is the essence of his entire story. Isaiah records the aftermath in some of the most haunting language in all of Scripture. "How you have fallen from heaven, morning star, son of the dawn. You have been cast down to the earth, you who once laid low the nations." Lucifer was hurled out of heaven, cast down, the being who had walked on the mountain of God, who had been covered in precious stones, who had shone with a light second only to God's own, thrown down like something discarded, and with him fell every angel who had chosen his side. The fall was not just physical, it was a total transformation. The light-bringer became the prince of darkness. The morning star became the adversary. In Hebrew, Satan. Everything he had been was inverted. His beauty became horror. His wisdom became cunning. His authority became tyranny. The fall did not just change his location, it changed his nature. Jesus himself, in the Gospel of Luke, says, "I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven." One sentence. No elaboration needed. The image says everything, a streak of burning light plunging from the highest place in existence to the lowest, instantaneous, irreversible, complete. After the fall, Lucifer became something else entirely. He became the adversary, the accuser, the tempter. His purpose, which had once been to reflect God's glory, became its mirror opposite, to defy, to corrupt, to destroy. His first act on earth, according to the book of Genesis, was to enter the Garden of Eden in the form of a serpent and tempt the first humans. He approached Eve and did what he does best. He asked a question. Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? A question designed not to challenge, but to plant doubt, to make someone second-guess something they already knew to be true. Eve ate the fruit. Adam followed. And humanity fell, not through violence or force, but through a whisper. The same being who had failed to conquer heaven by force succeeded in corrupting earth through subtlety. He could not defeat God directly, so instead he attacked what God loved most. Throughout the rest of Scripture, this is the pattern. Satan appears in the book of Job to challenge the faithfulness of a righteous man. He tempts Jesus in the wilderness with power, glory, and comfort. He is described as a roaring lion seeking someone to devour, and also as an angel of light who disguises himself to deceive. He is relentless, patient, and strategic. He lost the war in heaven, but he never stopped fighting. The book of Revelation describes how the story ends. Satan, the great dragon, the ancient serpent, is ultimately defeated. An angel descends from heaven with a great chain and binds him for 1,000 years. After a final rebellion, he is thrown into the lake of fire, where the text says he will be tormented day and night forever and ever. There is a profound irony in this ending. Lucifer's entire rebellion began because he wanted to ascend, to rise above his station, to sit on the highest throne. And his story ends with the deepest, most permanent descent imaginable. He wanted to go up. He went down. He wanted to rule everything. He ends up ruling nothing. The biblical account frames the entire arc as a cautionary story about the nature of pride. Not pride in the casual sense, not confidence or self-respect, but the kind of pride that looks at its own gifts and forgets where those gifts came from. The kind that sees its own brilliance and concludes it is self-made. Lucifer was not destroyed by an outside enemy. He was destroyed by himself. The story of Lucifer's fall is one of the most retold narratives in human history. It shaped the theology of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. It inspired Dante's Inferno, Milton's Paradise Lost, and countless works of art, literature, and film spanning 1,000 years. But the reason it endures is not simply religious. It is because the story speaks to something universal. Every person understands what it means to want more than you have. To look at what you are and feel it is not enough. To be tempted by the belief that you deserve to be at the center of everything. Lucifer's story is the story of what happens when that impulse goes unchecked, when brilliance becomes arrogance, when beauty becomes vanity, when the desire to be great becomes the refusal to be grateful. It is a warning that the highest fall is always possible, and that it always begins from the inside. And whether you read it as sacred history, as allegory, or as one of the greatest stories ever told, its power is undeniable. Our next video covers Ragnarok, the Norse apocalypse, and the end of the gods. If you enjoyed this, watch the full story of Odin, the god who spent his entire life preparing for that very end. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Drop your myth requests in the comments. We'll see you in the next tale.